Hello everyone, Luke here, and we're back doing another Dr. Stone review, or Melon Child, as everyone's been calling it. But before we get into it, just want to say a couple of things. My new book, it's out right now. You can go buy it on Amazon. I'll put links in the description below. And also got volume 16 of Dr. Stone the other day. Now this is probably my favourite volume of the series at the moment, because of the fact that we have this little panel. We are going to the moon, which when the anime onlys get to it, they're probably going to lose their absolute mind when they get to that moment, and it's probably going to bring the series just that big boost that it needs. So that'll be something I cannot wait for the anime onlys to experience. But for now, let's get talking about this chapter. Okay, so this has been Melon Child Chapter 2, or as we all know it, Dr. Stone Chapter 195, titled Treasure Hunter All Alone. And God, that title, like, that just hits you right in the feels when you realise exactly who it is, when you realise who it is that's all alone, and it's little Suika all alone in this world. It just hits you in the feels, and if you think that title's going to hit you in the feels, you haven't seen anything yet. But anyway, it starts off. I want to say it's a little bit of time after the end of the last chapter, because it seems like Suika has already started gathering up her allies together, getting them all in. All in a row, and standing them up, which I don't want to say this is a good idea, because of the fact that they could probably be blown over and just smashed to bits. But as we'll see later on in the chapter, Suika is more than ready to actually repair parts that are actually broken off from her allies. So anyway, at the moment she has Chrome, Senku and Taiju, and she's bringing Gen over at this point as well. And I had to actually go back and look, because Taiju has his arms sticking out like that, and was that the pose that he died in? Because at this point I feel like he is going to be brought back. Now, am I okay with that? 50-50, because I kind of wanted Taiju to die, because that would have been a amazing moment for the series, and it would have taken it to new heights, and give a sense of danger of the fact that anyone can go, and not even the Medusa can save them. But at the same time, Taiju is technically part of the main cast. He was part of the original three who started off the series, or I want to say the original four that started off the series. But yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 on that. But at the same time, they are being frozen in stone for quite some time, so it's not like an instant, like, oh, they are revived and everything's hunky dory. No, it's actually going to take a little bit of time before they're actually brought back. Now, Chrome's pose is quite interesting, because he has it on his stomach. He has his right arm on his stomach, which can be an indication of that's where Stanley shot him, and he was kind of like, oh, frig, this actually hurts. So yeah, Suika says that she's got to find everyone's statue and bring them together. Once she has, one of them has to have some revival fluid, and that just makes me feel, that just hits you right there in the feels when she actually says that. And one thing that actually does make it a lot more tragic as well is the fact that when we cut over to Matsukaze Francois and get Francos and Ginru, and we see dialogue coming from them. Now, I initially thought that this was because they were thinking this while they were frozen in stone, but no, it's actually more tragic than that. Suika is the one who's actually saying this dialogue. She says all the dialogue in this chapter, and that's kind of sad. The fact that she's so alone in this world, and wants someone to talk to, that she has to do the talking herself, but at the same time she's saying exactly what the characters would actually say if they were there in that situation, and that just makes it even more sad and even more tragic to her situation that she's actually in. And the phrases that she gives to the characters are, for Matsukaze, she says, were you not in a hurry to find us, Lord Suika? And I actually wanted to say Lord Suika when he replies, because she deserves to have a title, to have a proper title after this little mini arc. Which, by the way, the wiki on the Star Wars wiki admins have actually given this arc a title at last. It's called the New Stoneworld arc. That's the thing we're going with here. Which makes sense, because even though they're still technically in South America, the goal of the arc and the goal of the overall direction of the story has actually changed at this point. Anyway, continuing on, Franco says that Suika, as Franco says, was this not why we set aside revival fluid in advance? Which, yeah, that's kind of going to be an issue now, because it seems like throughout the years of while they were kissed in stone, animals probably came about and just destroyed basically all the supplies, as we'll soon see when she actually does get to Chelsea and Luna. And Ginru says, Suika as Ginru says, "Hey, at least we're together again." And you just see this little picture of just Suika's eyes, just like that, just looking very somber, because you can tell that she definitely wants to cry at this point, and I don't blame her. The fact that she has nobody in the world to talk to except herself, and just imagine what her friends are saying, that just makes it even more sad. Now we come to what I consider the funniest part of the chapter, where Suika says that she wishes she could talk to everyone and she misses them so badly, and she can't wait for a real reunion, and she's pulling on Ginru, and she pulls so hard that she actually cracks his arm off, the same arm that happened when Matsukaze's statue lost his arm. So it's a nice callback to that moment, and it just freaks her out, which I don't blame her. And she remembers that. What I love about this chapter and this whole arc at the moment is the fact that Suika is taking everything on board from what everyone is saying, which normal kids might be. Some may be interested in this, but the majority of kids, they can kind of like be a bit scattershot in their thoughts and what they process. But the fact that Suika's being able to process this shows a great deal of development and maturity on her part for someone of such a young age. And she remembers that if a broken piece gets eroded, it won't stick back together. And she figures that maybe Senku would actually have some supplies. So while she does find some old paper, it's nothing that she can use, and she eventually rummages until she does find something, some kind of sticky substance, maybe some glue to actually stick. It's his left arm. To actually stick Ginru's left arm back onto his body, and this is where we get a moment that, again, is just so sad and so tragic, where she actually finds Kohaku, Tsukasa and Hyoga's statues, and she decides that she better hurry and gather them up before they may have broken pieces or they may not. And of course she goes immediately for the hug from Kohaku, because that's one of the things she actually wanted in the last chapter, a hug from Kohaku, and the fact that Kohaku can't give it to her herself and she has to make do with, I'll just hug her statue, and that'll be enough for me for now. God, this chapter, man. So as Suika is carrying Kohaku's statue and struggling to carry it, she goes on to say, if Suika had a motorcycle, the spinning tires would make carrying Kohaku really easy. And you just see this one little panel of just her imagining her riding one of the tires while Kohaku's statue is tied to the back of it. Which, now, as much as I would love to see it, as much as I would love to see that, I feel like that's a bit too dangerous, because because given the fact that she's a child, and I wouldn't want a child to be put in danger by putting them on a motorcycle, because motorcycles can be dangerous. But at the same time, I would love to see something like that as well. But I can understand why people wouldn't want to see that. But then she goes on. But then she remembers that the spinning tires are the only item that she actually needs to actually make this work. And honestly, if this was Chrome in this situation, this arc would probably be over in about this amount of chapters if it was Chrome in this situation. But seriously, if it was Chrome in this situation, you'd be like, oh my god, Cork, you're so heavy, like a big bulging gorilla. And then he'd probably be imagining Cork just being like, boom, 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 giving him a bash on the head. But of course, with Suika, all she cares about is just getting Kawaku's statue back to safety. And once she remembers the tires, she quite in. I've got to ask a question. Did Suika make that little trolley thing? I'm guessing she did. So yeah, pretty much in a physical battle between Senku and Suika would probably win. But anyway, she makes herself and makes a trolley and puts the tires together, and now it's more easy to actually carry the statues, which again, showing off her intelligence, of the fact that she's very resourceful about what she can use and what she can actually reconfigure into new devices to actually use to make things a lot easier for herself. And as she brings the statues back together in one place, all the statues back together in one place, we get this one panel where we see Taiju's hands. Over Kohaku and Senku. Now, if Yuzuriya was with them, I guarantee that Yuzuriya will be in Kohaku's place. And yeah, even though we bash on Taiju, you've got to admit he's very loyal to his friends, and the fact that he's there beside Senku with his arms out. That again is a very touching moment to show their camaraderie and their friendship. And Suika goes on to give them more voices, with her giving the voices of Ryusuke going, ha ha ha, well done, Suika, which this is definitely something he has said before to her when he was revived on Treasure Island the first time. And for Yukio, she has, with everyone in one place, there's no fear of losing broken pieces. Yeah, unless you topple over. And with Kawaku, she goes, you must be tired. Take a break and let us take over. Suika, it's gonna be all right, Suika. Don't worry. You are gonna revive at least one person, and they are gonna help you out. But yeah, you can definitely see her like just holding back the emotion, and she actually says this later on as we see the moon almost like the Y man is looking down on her and mocking her and thinking like, you cannot revive anyone. And again, this must prove that the battery in Joel's watch has been completely burnt out, because if this was the case, then there would be another petrification beam going all around the world at this point. So it must have burnt out the diamond battery that was created in that watch of his. But she goes on to say, except nobody's actually talking. Suika is all alone in this world, as we see her sing on top of her treehouse, on top of the tower in Fort Medusa. And yeah, I'll cry for you, Suika. But yeah, we cut to a few days later. Now, with this being a full moon, and we had a full moon in the last chapter, it must be like a month has passed by at least. So Suika's been living on her own for a month, which I can only imagine living on your own with no one to talk to for a month, much less a kid doing it. A few days later, as she's wolfing herself a basket, she remembers that Luna and Chelsea are the only ones that she couldn't find, and they must have gone the other way from where her and Frank Francos went to. So while they probably headed south, they probably headed north, and we see her catching fish and eating them. So yeah, she's at least got the idea of how to create fire down. Probably from using her sweat and and whatever's left of her lens to actually create the fire, in the same way that Chrome used his sweat and the lens to actually defeat Magma in the Village Games arc. So she's at least got fire down. So she's at least got her basic need down of actually how to cook food, and the fact that she can catch fish in that way pretty much again shows her resourcefulness. And fish are hard to catch, and the fact that she's been doing it, pretty impressive on her part. And we see her using one of the tires to actually carry the fish, which, gotta admit, that is pretty clever as well. She goes on to say the Suika exploration squad is ready to set off, and we see her new attire, which is no different from her old attire, just got the big tire on her back. Now, people are saying that there's probably going to be a time skip, which I can kind of see that, yeah, there is probably going to be a time skip at this point because of what happens at the end of the chapter. But the fact, and Suika might grow up a bit to the point that she can't actually fit in her melon. But I will say, if they can reconfigure that tire and make it into sort of like a way that she can actually hide in the tire and be the replacement for her watermelon stuff, I'd be stealthing. I'll be okay with that, because that could easily fit a adult size human, that tire. So yeah, depending on how far Suika is gonna grow up. But yeah, I could see her, even if she grows up a little bit, still fitting in that tire and being the replacement for what she does with the watermelon. Also, Suika Exploration Squad, make that a thing. Make that a thing going forward in this series. But anyway, as she takes off with the supplies in the tire, including the fish which she uses to have food to as she travels on her way to actually retrieve Chelsea and Luna's statues. Which again, showing how much she has learnt from everyone, and she's bringing it all together, showing the survival techniques of what she has to do to survive when she's all alone. She says if there were revivers too, then there should have some revival fluid. Those two are Suika's last hope, and she eventually does find her way to where Chelsea and Luna are, and she's like, Suika finally found you, thanks to the bottle of fluid you tossed down, because of course she finds the bottle of fluid that Luna tossed down. She's like, oh, they might actually be up there, and of course she actually does find them. But as she rummages through the bag that they had, she realises that there is no revival fluid, and she says, well, if they hadn't have tossed it, Suika might never have found them anyway. So it's kind of like a best of worst situation. Like, well, even though this might potentially be the last bottle that we have, the fact that you threw it and I was able to find it, that's just the best that I've got to do out of this situation. And she eventually finds the map that Chelsea has, and she eventually settles on the fact that nobody has some survival fluid. Suika's going to be alone until the day Suika dies. Suika, you're not going to die. You are not going to die alone in this world. Nobody is that cruel. Not even the Y Man. But yeah, that moment, like, just broke me when she said that, when an 11-year-old kid, or, well, 14-year-old chronologically, but still, an 11-year-old kid was resigning herself to die alone in this world. If that doesn't make you feel emotion, I don't know what will. And this is where we get, like, probably the apex of Suika's character development at this point. She goes on to say that was the last chance. Suika thought Suika would cry if there was no revival fluid after all. No tears. Suika's growing up, can't be a crybaby anymore. And it's like, just those words there. Perfect character development on her part, showing her growing up, maturity, and showing that she has to be brave. And in her eyes, thinking that brave means that you can't cry in this world. But Suika, I'm gonna use what Fish Tiger did to Koala in One Piece, because it's a very similar situation where Koala. Well, I want to say very similar but different circumstances, because Koala was tortured into not being able to cry because of what the celestial dragons did to them. And in this situation, Suika's like kind of putting on a brave face, saying like, I can't cry, I need to be brave, I'm the last human on this world, I've got to be brave for everyone, because if I fail, then the whole of the human race is doomed. But going back to Koala, Fisher Tiger said, it's okay for you to cry. And that's when Koala just like started bawling her eyes out and started crying for probably the first time in years. Suika, it is okay to cry, even though you grow up and you feel like you have to be brave for everyone. It's okay to cry in these situations. As we see Suika gathering all her allies together, and her just falling asleep next to Kohaku's statue, like, please Kohaku, hug Suika a lot when you wake up, because that is just such a cute moment there where she just falls asleep. She just falls asleep by Kohaku's statue, which if that was by Senku's statue, if Kohaku's statue was by Senku's statue, that would have been like so amazing. Like she falls asleep next to the two people that have probably influenced her the most throughout the series. But the fact that Kohaku, who has the motherly parental figure, it makes the most sense for her to fall asleep at her statue. But of course, as well, she brings Hyoga's statue and Tsuka's statue back to there. And I love the fact that she found their cloaks so she could put them back on there. Because if you remember, they ditched their cloaks when they went into battle against Maya and Stanley's forces. But anyway, again, Hyoga, I feel like he is going to be revived at this point, which, again, I'm 50-50 on. The same with Taiju. I feel like Hyoga should potentially die, and even if they do revive him, I want to be able to say like he's not going to make it out, because he was dead, completely dead at that point, riddled with bullets. Tsukasa even said Hyoga has met his end, so he is probably the one thing that even if they were to revive everyone, he's not going to come back. But again, do they want to have many deaths in this series, and would it affect the series? For me, it won't, but I can see why it would affect other people. Like, it would kind of take away from the tension. Like, if they have just this magical device that can revive anyone with just three simple words, then I can understand why people would feel like the lack of tension at that point. But at the same time, Dr. Stone, it's not really a series that focuses mainly on death, and it's not a series that needs death in order to be amazing, as showcased here. Because even here in this situation, even though they're technically dead in a sense that they're all encased in stone and they can't move or speak or talk or feel anything, there's still a bit of tension here because Suika is all on her own. But again, I can see why people would have an issue if Hyoga was actually brought back, because again, if he was brought back, what would he actually do? And one thing I've got to comment on is the fact that we have... Okay, even though Suika didn't fall asleep at Senku's side, the fact that as she's sleeping, we've got Kohaku and Senku just smiling down on her, probably symbolising how proud they are of Suika for everything that she's doing all on her own. And I cannot wait for everyone to be revived and just praising the hell out of Suika. So that's a touching moment on that point. And she eventually does wake up, and Isabella's like, "Oh, did I fall asleep? I didn't mean to fall asleep." So she goes on to say Suika can eat to come up with energy and come up with a plan and maybe explore and find more food, as she finds the map that... she looks at the map that Chelsea had, and she is able to find some food reminiscent of what she was doing at the beginning of... sort of like part way through the South America arc, where they actually did get to South America and they were very resourceful. So it's quite a good parallel to what was happening there to what is happening now, and she is able to find some food. And she goes on to say, "You all can't talk, but you're still working hard to teach Suika stuff. over the course of time, those lessons pass down from person to person. Again, remembering the lesson that's the most important thing, or the most important message of this series as well, and how it's being passed down to her. Like, she's the one who has the basic scientific know-how, and she's learned from everyone and pass it down to her, and being able to learn despite the fact that they're not there. Just showcases the fact that science is everything and everyone, and it can, and even though the people that create the science in the first place, they eventually pass away and are gone from this world, their inventions, know-how, and everything that we still use to this day are passed down to people, from people to people, to able to adapt and evolve. And I feel like that's the important message of this, of not just this chapter, but also the entire series as well, that science over the course of time, those lessons, that are always going to be passed down from person to person, no matter who they are. And that's a really good message to take away from this, the fact that even though I'm gone personally from this world, I can still speak to you through what I've done for this world, and how I've changed this world, and how I've brought these new inventions, these new scientific creations to this world. Suika says that one of the examples of this is writing things on paper, which makes sense because just before they set out on their adventure, Yukio set up a science school, and she was part of that, so she was able to at least get some writing experience at that point. She eventually remembers that Senku did have some paper himself, and as she brings it up, out, she discovers that it's the recipe for revival fluid, and you can see that that one of the ingredients she needs, she's already got, which is fire, because she made fire earlier on in the chapter, so she's got that. She goes on to say, right, when humans need things, they start off with nothing, and Suika's human, and we'll meet again, which she says in front of Senku's statue, which is kind of a parallel between what Byakuya said in kind of his flashback, and the fact that we'll meet again, Senku, even though that's impossible at this point. But with this, it is actually going to be possible. She is going to meet Senku again, and this is where she starts crying her eyes out. It's okay for you to cry, Suika, and she says, starting with nothing, Suika's going to do some science. Oh, look at that, Suika's crybaby after all, and that's where the chapter ends. So, wow, really emotional chapter at this point, like just hitting you in the feels in just the most amazing way. Now, with this being the case of the fact that she's going to do some science, we are probably going to see a time skip over a few years as she gathers all the materials together to create some revival fluid. Because if you remember, it took Senku a year to actually perfect the revival fluid. So this is actually going to take at least a year for Suika to do, and probably even 2 years to actually gather the materials and create the perfect revival fluid. So we could see like a time skip of like 8 years. 8 years in total over these last few chapters, or maybe just 5 years. Maybe when we first saw Chalk and Sagaria in the like grown up form, that was 3 years, and that was the time skip to like, okay, this is when Suika's going to revive, and we probably might get another 2 years. So it'll probably still be only 5 years. It'll probably still only be 5 years, but yeah, everyone's probably expecting, and I am as now expecting the next chapter to be like just a time skip, in the same way that we had the time skip when they built the Perseus Hall. How we had a montage going through the important moments, and it eventually culminated in Suika, not in everyone building the boats, which took place over a year. So this is probably going to take at least a year in of itself. So that's something we'll just have to wait and see. But really good chapter, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we have coming up in the next chapter, whether or not we'll actually see a new design for Suika. Not drastically different, just her a little bit grown up, maybe even longer hair. Suika with longer hair, that might be a possibility. But anyway, what did you guys think of this chapter? Let me know, like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And this will be Lash and Luke signing off. Later, guys.